Now, the topic of today's show is bullying, and earlier we met the brave young man, Lebo Mofokeng, who at the age of 8 wrote an inspiring book about his experiences of bullying at school.
We're now joined by Nkini Phasha, the Vice Chairperson at the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. And since joining the organization in 2001, he's been working on mental health education and awareness, as well as outreach programs for the youth. Welcome, Mr. Phasha.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Yeah, lovely to have you back with us.
Thank you.
So we're interested in more of we've heard of Lelo's accounts and experience, but we want to get to now the grit of it, the source. What is bullying?
What a champ here. I mean, Lelo.
What
I mean,
a champ.
wow. I mean, there's just one word. I mean, certainly if, one has to define bullying in like layman's terms, is that it's an act of, threats, abuse, harassment, and really victimizing someone else. But there are two components to it that are very critical. It's the imbalance in power. So there's a shift of power to the bully, and of course it has to be repetitive. So that really would then classically characterize what we call bullying. And certainly in South Africa, I mean, more than 50% of our learners, over 3 million learners, get bullied a year in South Africa. So it's a growing culture in our schools, in our communities, very, very concerning.
So having said that, that whole power dynamic, how much of our history and just an inequality plays into that? Because where there's inequality, there's definitely a power dynamic.
Indeed.
How much of our history plays into how we see power and how we use it?
Absolutely. I mean, as South Africans, we really carry a lot of baggage if one looks at where we come from as a society. So there's a lot of anger in our society. And of course, kids mimic what they see in adults. So whatever happens in the home, it could be domestic violence that takes place in the home, they will take that and mimic and obviously act out. And maybe at school, and really, obviously, act to be more powerful within their peers, and then bully, other kids. So there's without a doubt that whatever happens in the home plays a crucial role in ultimately, how kids act out at school. And, what also we tend to, when we talk about bullying, we focus a lot on obviously the victim, but, the child that actually is a perpetrator. There could be some underlying, serious issues in the child that they're trying to obviously cope with and deal with.
Yeah. And how would a parent identify that, hey, my child could be a bully?
Look, I mean, there will definitely be a change in mood. I mean, as you've seen in one of the illustrations in Lelo's book, is that, they would hate their lives. I mean, there's one illustration where he says, I hate my life. So there will be that significant change in obviously how they interact with people around them. Their performance at school will drop. We do know that at least 1 out of 10 learners would drop out of school. They would not want to actually go back and be in that environment, that actually, predisposes them to the bullying. So certainly, you can look out for such things. But also, there is cyberbullying, so maybe, I mean, we know that, in fact, more and more young people are exposed to, smartphones and, technological, devices. So what actually happens there? You need, as a parent, be exposed and want to know and ask questions and check what your child actually gets up to on those devices.
Yeah.
For all you know, they could actually be exposed, to cyberbullying as well.
And also just in a school context, how important is it for schools and institutions at large to have a bullying policy?
Very, very important. I mean, as the South African Depression and Anxiety Groups, we've seen in those schools that we've engaged with where they've implemented that anti-bullying, policy and some awareness around it, whether it's through posters or brochures, it has really, gone a long way in changing the dynamics in those schools. So it's very, very critical that we educate and empower our children. I mean, very often the child that is bullied would not want to talk about it because they fear that, number one, they will actually be bullied even more, that they might appear to be weak because remember, it's a power struggle. But educating them and empowering them, and even the educators themselves, there is no doubt that obviously in most of our schools, the educators really are overwhelmed. I mean, there's so many kids in one classroom, so the resources aren't always there. But certainly implementing those policies, educating and creating that awareness goes a long way.
I think it's important to take this time to just say if anyone is feeling bullied or powerless and needs to be educated or regain your power and your strength, please do contact the SADC helpline. It should be on your screens right now. Call them up, have a conversation, let it out, speak, because we can only do so much.
Exactly, and it's got far-reaching consequences. I mean, we do know that, some kids have even gone to the extreme of taking away their lives. So there is, without a doubt, that there is psychological and emotional distress that, can actually result from the bullying. So it is very, very important that, people get in touch with us as SADC, and we'll be able to offer the alternatives and offer the help.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously, some of the psychological effects of bullying are depression, anxiety, all those kind of issues that we see really rife in our communities and our society right now. And I think it's also just really important to remember that bullying doesn't just happen on school playgrounds. It happens in the workplace, it happens in the home, it can take that form anywhere.
Anywhere. And I mean, I'm glad you're raising workplace bullying, because I think very often, you think, okay, my boss is just like that, oh, let me be submissive because that is the culture within that organization. But certainly where you are being shouted at, screamed at, where everything is your fault.
Or put down,
you put down. Really, it's got far-reaching, consequences. I mean, it can linger on with you for years. It really breaks you down. It breaks down your soul. You feel worthless. You feel that you really, really are not worthy of anything, that you can't amount to anything. And you start judging yourself. You might even feel that, you blame yourself. Why am I like this? Why is that? Or why? Exactly. So it is important, especially in the workplace, that people are on the lookout for such behaviors. You can still be, have law and order, in the workplace without having to resort, to such extremes where, people, you walk in, there's screaming, there's, all these bad, foul languages that are being used, in the workplace. There is absolutely no place for that. So certainly, I think people need to really, really be aware, particularly with cyberbullying, because I think that is a growing phenomenon. I mean, we know that over 10%, people actually are exposed, to cyberbullying. So that's certainly a growing phenomenon. And I think for the bully, they feel that, they are behind the scenes. They've got this power, this control, because they don't have to expose themselves. So they circulate all this material on social media. You could be getting text messages that really are harassing to you. And also remember, there is also a legal implication to it. Because if somebody does that to you, you can actually report that to the authorities. Because, I'm not allowed to harass you. I'm not allowed to send you, offensive and, texts or even images. But we're seeing more and more of that.
Happen. So as you will have noticed, the SADC helpline number is on the screen, so feel free to use it at your discretion. After the break, we're back with our guests to continue the discussion, and we'll be sharing your comments and taking your calls. So please don't hesitate to call us. And if you'd like to share your story, then make sure you do dial that number. It's 021 430 9881.